Let me tell you about the night I became invisible. Not in the way people mean when they say women of a certain age become invisible, that gradual social fading that I had been warned about and had mostly refused to accept. I mean invisible in a specific technical sense. In a group chat called Mill Madness on a Tuesday evening in October, I became, for a few critical minutes, someone who could read everything without anyone knowing I was there. My name had appeared in the chat at 9:47 p.m., not in a message, as a new member. Someone had added me. The notification appeared on my phone the way notifications do. The small banner at the top of the screen, the group name, the message, Sandra was added to the group. Sandra, that is my name. Sandra Beaumont, 63 years old, recently retired high school English teacher, grandmother of two, and as of 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in October, the newest, and I suspected immediately the most unintended member of Emil Madness. I stared at the notification. I understood what I was looking at. MIL, mother-in-law. My daughter-in-law's name is Courtney. I tapped the notification. The chat opened, and I began to read. Not the most recent messages, the ones that would have told me immediately whether I had been added by accident or by some strange, incomprehensible intention. I scrolled up. All the way up to the beginning, to the first message in the chat, to the date stamp at the top of the thread. 26 months ago. 2 years and 2 months. The first message read, "Okay, ladies, we need a safe space because someone just told me my stuffed peppers were a little bland. I give up. Group chat officially open." That message was from Courtney. The stuffed peppers she was referring to were mine. I had said at a Sunday dinner in August 2 years ago that the peppers were a little bland and that she might try adding more oregano next time. I had meant this as helpful, as the kind of cooking note my own mother used to give me, direct, practical, intended to improve rather than to criticize. Courtney had smiled and said, "Thanks for the tip." And then she had gone home and opened a group chat and named it Mill Madness. I sat in my living room with my phone in both hands. I read. I read for 2 hours and 40 minutes. The chat had 7 members: Courtney, her college friends Bree and Jade, her work friend Dominique, her cousin Ashley, and 2 people whose names I recognized as part of Courtney's social circle, but whom I had never met: a woman named Priscilla and one named Tammy. In 26 months of messages, my name appeared 412 times. I did not count this in that first reading. I counted it later systematically after I had taken screenshots of every single page of the chat, which I did, before I did anything else, before I responded to the accidental addition in any way, before I even fully processed what I was reading. First screenshots. All of them. Saved to my camera roll, and then to the cloud backup, and then the following morning emailed to myself for a third copy. 31 years of teaching high school had taught me that documentation matters, and that the moment between seeing something and having proof of it is the most important moment to act in. I took the screenshots, then I read, and I will tell you what I found. But first, let me tell you about the family gathering I was planning for Christmas, because the gathering is where this ends, and the ending is what I want you to understand before the beginning. The annual Beaumont Christmas gathering, held every year at my home, the home where my son Marcus grew up, the home I have maintained for 31 years in the specific, comfortable way of a woman who knows how to make a house feel like the kind of place people want to come back to. 42 people. Marcus's family, his brother David's family, cousins, aunts and uncles. The gathering that I had organized every year for 3 decades, and that was by every measure I had the event my family most reliably showed up for. I had been planning it for 8 weeks. Courtney knew about it, had confirmed attendance, had offered in the specific way she offered things she knew I would decline, because I preferred to handle the hosting myself, to help with anything you need. The Christmas gathering was 12 days away when I became a member of MIL Madness. I read the chat. I took the screenshots. I did not respond, did not leave the group, did not give any indication that I had seen anything. I made 12 days of plans, And on the day of the Christmas gathering, with 42 people in my home and the table set and the food prepared and the specific warmth of a house full of family in December, I waited until the moment that felt exactly right. And then I asked a question, very calmly, in front of everyone. My name is Sandra Beaumont. I am 63 years old. I taught English literature at the same high school for 31 years. Fitzgerald Faulkner, Morrison O'Connor. The particular richness of American literature that I had the privilege of introducing to 17-year-olds who were not always grateful for the introduction and who sometimes years later sent me letters saying it had mattered. Those letters are in a box in my study. I am not sentimental about much, but I am sentimental about those letters. I retired 2 years ago. Not because I was done. I was not done. Not emotionally, not intellectually, but because my husband Frank had retired the year before, and because we had plans, and because the timing was right. Frank and I have been married for 38 years. He is a structural engineer retired. He is a calm, steady man who reads history and makes excellent chili, and who, when I showed him the screenshots of the chat the morning after, I found it, read them carefully and without expression, and then said, "What do you want to do?" That question, from that man, is one of the reasons I have been married to him for 38 years. My son Marcus is 36. He is the elder of our 2 children. His brother David is 32. Marcus is an architect, which suits him. He has his father's analytical precision and my love of making things that will last. He married Courtney 4 years ago at a ceremony in the Berkshires that was genuinely beautiful, and at which I cried at the right moments and held it together at the others. I loved Marcus's wedding. I had for 4 years been trying to love Courtney. Let me be precise about what I mean by that. Loving Courtney was not the problem. I am capable of loving people who are difficult, who are prickly, who require patience. I have spent 31 years loving 17-year-olds who were not easy to love. The problem was not the loving. The problem was the discovery, slow accumulating, then sudden and total in the specific way of group chat archives, that the loving had been from early on entirely one-directional. Courtney is 33. She works in event planning, which she is good at. She is organized, creative, detail-oriented, good at managing many moving pieces toward a unified outcome. These are the qualities I had genuinely admired in her. She is also, as I would come to understand with considerable precision across 26 months of documented evidence, someone who had been performing a version of our relationship for my benefit, while maintaining in a group chat with 6 friends, a very different and very detailed accounting of what she actually thought. Let me tell you about the chat. 2 hours and 40 minutes of reading. I want to tell you what I found, and I want to be as precise as I can about it because precision is what distinguishes she said mean things from here is the specific texture of what was happening. The chat was organized in my reading of it into categories, not categories Courtney had created deliberately, but categories that emerged from the patterns of what was discussed. The first category, my cooking. The stuffed peppers that opened the chat were not the last of the cooking commentary. Over 26 months, my cooking was discussed on at least 37 separate occasions. The commentary ranged from mild, Sandra brought that dry roast chicken again, to specific a thread of 9 messages in which Courtney described in detail a Thanksgiving turkey I had made, and which she called basically a meat-flavored brick, with accompanying emoji that I will not reproduce here. My turkey is not dry. I have made the same turkey for 30 years. Frank and David and Marcus and every guest who has ever eaten it have said it is good. But in the group chat, it was a running joke. The second category, my appearance. This one was harder to read than the cooking. Cooking is a matter of taste. Literally, people have different palates and different standards. And I can, with effort, understand that Courtney might genuinely experience my cooking as less than wonderful. My appearance is not a matter of taste in the same way. In the chat, my appearance was discussed on multiple occasions. The specific items, a blazer I wore to Marcus and Courtney's first anniversary dinner that Courtney described as giving elementary school principal vibes, and not in a fun way. A haircut I got in the spring of year 1 that was described as she came back from the salon and somehow got worse. The reading glasses I had started wearing, which generated a thread in which Courtney and Bree exchanged a series of messages about the frames that I will summarize as unkind. I had complimented Courtney on her own glasses when she got them approximately 3 months before the glasses thread about mine. The third category, my parenting of Marcus. This was the category that cut deepest, and I want to be careful about how I describe it, because I want to be fair. The chat contained conversations, some brief, some extended, about Marcus's relationship with me, about what Courtney characterized as my hovering, about specific instances where I had called Marcus, or texted him, or suggested plans, and about how Courtney experienced this as intrusive. Some of what she described, I can look at honestly and acknowledge I had in the early years of their marriage probably called Marcus too frequently, probably suggested family gatherings at a rate that was more than she was comfortable with, probably expressed opinions about things, their apartment, their schedule, their plans more often than was warranted. These are fair criticisms, and I accept them, and I had in the years since adjusted. I had become more careful about the frequency of contact, about waiting to be invited, rather than inviting myself about holding my opinions unless they were asked for. What I had not known was that the adjustments I had made in response to what I understood as general friction conversations. Marcus and I had had changes I had made in good faith, had been in parallel chronicled in a group chat as evidence of my fundamental inadequacy as a mother-in-law. The adjustments I made were not received as adjustments. They were received as the baseline being reset with the original behavior remaining as evidence against me. The fourth category, the performances. This is the one that required the most sitting with. Scattered throughout the 26 months of chat were moments where Courtney would describe to the group interactions she had just had with me, interactions that had been, as far as I was aware, positive. Pleasant family moments, times when I had thought things were going well. A Sunday brunch in March of year 1, I had thought it was lovely. In the chat, 90 minutes after I left, just survived brunch with Sandra. She told me 3 times the mimosas would be better with better champagne. 3 times. I counted. I had mentioned the champagne once. I was certain it was once. But the chat said 3 times, and the chat had 6 people agreeing with Courtney that this was funny, and I was the only one in the chat who had been present at the brunch. A family vacation where Marcus's side of the family had rented a house together for a week, in my memory. A genuinely good week, the kind that produces photographs you frame. In the chat, a daily diary of what Courtney described as surviving Camp Sandra. The entries were detailed and in several cases involved things I had said or done that I had no memory of saying or doing. This is the thing that unsettled me most. Not the unkind things she had said that I recognized as her reaction to real events, even events where I disagreed with her characterization. The things I didn't recognize at all. Either she was describing incidents that hadn't happened as she described them, which is possible memory and perception are both unreliable, or there were things I was doing that I was entirely unaware of. Both possibilities were disturbing in their own way. The fifth category, Marcus. I want to be careful here because Marcus is my son and I love him, and this is not a story about his failures. But the chat showed me something about the shape of our family that I needed to see. In the conversations about me and the frustrations Courtney expressed, the venting, the mockery, Marcus was almost never positioned as someone who disagreed with her. There were occasional references to things he had said in my defense, small and brief. But the dominant frame across 26 months was that Courtney and Marcus were aligned in their experience of me as difficult, and that the group chat was where Courtney processed that experience with her friends. Marcus knew the chat existed. There was evidence of this in the messages, not that he was a member, but that Courtney had mentioned the chat to him and that he had not objected to it. I set this aside. For later. The reading was done. I had the screenshots. I had at 12:31 a.m. removed myself quietly from the group. No notification. I had turned off notifications for the chat before I left, so that my departure would not generate a message visible to the group until someone noticed my name was gone. I went to bed. I did not sleep well. In the morning, I showed Frank the screenshots. He read them. He set the phone down. "What do you want to do?" he said. I told him. He nodded. 12 days, he said. 12 days, I said. The 12 days between reading the chat and the Christmas gathering were the most deliberate 12 days of my life. I want to be honest about what deliberate looked like because I think people imagine that in situations like this, the person who has been wronged is either consumed by rage or is coldly strategic in a way that doesn't feel entirely human. What I was neither of those things. I was a 63-year-old retired English teacher who had spent 2 years being mocked in a group chat by her daughter-in-law, and who had to decide carefully, honestly, with full awareness of the consequences, what to do about it. The first thing I did in those 12 days was nothing visible. I did not call Marcus. I did not text Courtney. I did not change my behavior in any way that would signal to either of them that anything had changed. Courtney had not apparently noticed that I had been added to and then removed from the chat. The chat was active enough that my brief appearance had gone unobserved. I had 12 days of what she believed was normal. I used them to think. Day 1, I read the screenshots again, more carefully. I made notes, not as evidence gathering, I already had all the evidence, as comprehension. I was trying to understand what had actually been happening in my relationship with Courtney as distinct from what I had believed was happening. Some of what I found in the rereading moments where Courtney had expressed to the group a genuine frustration that I recognized as legitimate. Places where I had overstepped. Places where my well-intentioned comments had landed as criticism. Places where the frequency of my contact had been objectively more than was comfortable for a young married couple. These things were real. I could hold them as real without using them to excuse everything else. Day 3. I called my friend Janet, who has been my closest friend for 22 years, and who is someone I trust with things that are not for general audiences. I told her about the chat. I told her the parts that were legitimate criticism and the parts that were not. Janet listened for a long time. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to ask a question at Christmas," I said. "What question?" she said. I told her. She was quiet for a moment. "Sandra," she said. "Yes," I said. That's very controlled," she said. "I know," I said. "Are you sure?" she said. "I've been teaching 17-year-olds for 31 years," I said. "I know the difference between a question that opens a conversation and a question that reveals one. This is the second kind." Janet was quiet again. "Are you okay?" she said. I thought about this honestly. "Not entirely," I said, "but I will be." Day 5. The conversation with Frank. Not about strategy, we had covered strategy. About the actual thing, the underlying thing. The question that the 12 days had given me enough space to ask myself properly. "Frank," I said, "did you know not the chat, but the general did you know she felt this way about me?" Frank was quiet for a long time. "I suspected," he said carefully, "that things were more difficult than what she showed you. I didn't know the extent." "You suspected and didn't tell me," I said. "I didn't know what to tell you," he said. "I had a feeling, not evidence, and I didn't want to add to it," I said. "Yes," he said. I sat with this. "Was I difficult?" I said. "Be honest." Frank, who is honest with me in the way of 38 years of marriage, not cruel, not falsely gentle, actually honest, said, "In the first year, you called Marcus a lot, more than he needed. You had opinions more often than was useful." "And after," I said. "You corrected," he said. "I watched you correct. I noticed it." "She didn't notice," I said. "No," he said. "Or she noticed and didn't credit it." "Which is worse," I said. He thought about it. "The second one," he said. Day 8. I finished planning the Christmas gathering, the menu which I had been developing for weeks, the seating arrangement for 42 people which I do on a spreadsheet with color coding, because I am who I am, the activities for the children, the decorations which Frank helps with because he has better spatial sense than I do. I planned the gathering with the same care I had planned every Beaumont Christmas for 30 years. not as a performance, because this gathering mattered to me regardless of what the chat had said, and the people coming to it. 42 of them were my family, and caring for them was not something I was going to do differently, because one of them had a secret group chat. Day 10, I prepared what I was going to say. Not a speech, not a confrontation. A question. Specifically, a question that a 31-year veteran of high school literature classrooms would recognize as a Socratic question. The kind that does not demand an answer, but creates the conditions for understanding to emerge in the room. I have asked many thousands of questions over 31 years. I know what a good question does. Day 12, the gathering, 42 people. My house warm from the cooking and the bodies and the heat of a December family event. The specific noise of it, children running, adults talking, the kitchen and the living room and the hallway, all full of the people I love. Marcus and Courtney arrived at noon. Courtney came in with the smile she uses for these gatherings, warm, present the performance of a woman who is good at family events, because family events are professionally speaking her domain. She hugged me. "Everything looks beautiful, Sandra," she said, as always. "Thank you," I said. She went to find Marcus's cousin, whom she liked. I watched her go. I waited. The gathering had a rhythm, as it always does. Noon to 2, arrival, the chaos of coats and greetings, and children discovering each other. The food being laid out, the particular anticipatory quality of a buffet that is about to be opened. 2 to 4, eating, the concentrated pleasure of a family that eats well together, the conversations that happen across plates and over second helpings. 4 to 5:30, the settling, the desserts, the moment when children become either ecstatic or exhausted, and adults find seats and stay in them. I had chosen the time. 4:15. Most people seated, most of the food, finished the room at the specific comfortable fullness of a gathering that has reached its natural resting point before the departure energy begins. I was standing near the fireplace, not centrally, not in a place that screamed, "I am about to say something," just near it, as I often am at these gatherings, because it is warm and I have always run cold. Marcus was on the sofa with his brother David and David's wife Patricia. Courtney was nearby in the armchair she usually gravitates to, talking to Frank's sister Margaret and Margaret's daughter. The grandchildren were at the children's table at the far end of the dining room. 42 people. I said at a volume that carried across the room, without quite being raised, "I want to ask everyone something, if I may." The room quieted. Not completely, conversations taper, they don't stop all at once. But in the particular way of a room where the person who hosts the gathering says something, the room gave me its attention. "In the spirit of the season," I said, "I've been thinking about honesty, about the things we say to each other and the things we say about each other, about the gap between those two things." Light, general nodding, a few smiles. This sounded, I knew, like the beginning of a toast, like something warm and thoughtful from the woman who always says something warm and thoughtful at Christmas. I looked at Courtney. She was looking at me with the attentive expression of someone listening to a toast. "I have a question for the room," I said. "It's a simple one." I paused. Has anyone here ever been part of a conversation about someone they loved, or someone they were obligated to be in relationship with, where the conversation was significantly different from what they would say to that person's face? A beat of silence. Not the silence of incomprehension, the silence of recognition. Several people in the room, not Courtney, yet others, had the expression of people who had just recognized themselves in a question they hadn't expected. I let the silence sit for exactly 4 seconds, which is the amount of time a Socratic question needs to breathe before you continue. Then I said, "I ask because 2 years ago someone I care about started a group chat. The chat was called Mill Madness. I was added to it accidentally last month." The room went very quiet. I looked at Courtney. Her face had done something that I will describe as precisely as I can. It had moved from listening to stricken in the time it takes to understand that what you thought was a private thing has not been private. "I read the whole chat," I said, "and I took screenshots." I let this sit. Not cruelly, not with satisfaction. with the specific quality of someone who's making a fact available to a room that needs to have the fact available to it. I'm not going to read from it, I said. I'm not going to perform any of it. I just want to say in front of the family, since the chat included discussions of the family that I know, and that I've spent the last 12 days thinking about what I know and what I want to do with it, and what kind of relationship I want to have going forward. I looked at Marcus. He had gone in the 30 seconds since I began, through several expressions. He had arrived at the one I recognized as his father's expression, the still attending expression of a man who understands that something important is happening and is not going to pretend otherwise. Marcus, I said, I love you. This conversation is not about our relationship. He nodded. Once. I looked back at the room. The question I want to leave everyone with, I said, is not a complicated one. It's the question I gave my students every year when we read their first serious literature, when we read the first book that showed them something real about how people treat each other. The question is, knowing what you know, what do you choose to do? I paused. Merry Christmas, I said. I went to the kitchen to start the coffee. I filled the large coffee urn, the one I use for gatherings, the one that holds enough for 40 people, and that takes 8 minutes to brew. I got out the cups. I arranged the cream and sugar on the counter in the way I always arrange them. I did these things with deliberate, steady attention, the way you do ordinary tasks when your hands need something to do because the rest of you is very full. Through the kitchen doorway I could hear the room. Not the words, not most of them, but the quality of it. The specific altered quality of a room where something unexpected has happened, and 40 people are processing it, some together and some separately, and some in the specific private way of people who need to say nothing in order to think clearly. 2 people came into the kitchen in the first 4 minutes. The first was Frank's sister Margaret, who is 70 and who has known me for 38 years, and who put her hand on my arm without saying anything, which was exactly what I needed. The second was Marcus's cousin, Ellen, who is 41, and whom I have always liked for the directness that runs in her side of the family. She came in, looked at me for a moment, and said, "For what it's worth, I didn't know about the chat." "Thank you," I said. "Is there anything I can do?" she said. "Help me carry the cups out," I said. We carried the cups out. I went back to the gathering. The room had the quality of a gathering in which a significant thing has happened and people are finding their way back to the ordinary texture of the event. Not chaos, not the prolonged drama of a scene that hasn't been resolved. The particular settling that happens when something has been said and is now in the room, and everyone is deciding what to do with its being there. The children at their table at the far end of the dining room were entirely unaffected. Children have this gift. Courtney was not in the armchair. I noted this without reacting to it. Marcus came to me. He came into the kitchen. I had gone back for the coffee filters, a task that did not actually require returning, but that gave us a reason to be in the kitchen together, without it looking like a confrontation. He stood in the doorway. "Mum," he said. "Marcus," I said. "I didn't know about the chat," he said. "I know," I said. I believed this, mostly. The chat had referenced conversations they'd had, his awareness of her frustrations, but not as far as the screenshots showed direct knowledge of the chat itself. "But you knew she was frustrated," I said. "You knew things were difficult. Between us." "Yes," he said. "And you didn't tell me," I said. He was quiet. "I didn't know how," he said. I thought it was getting better. You adjusted. I could see you adjusting. I thought if things settled down on their own, it would be better than making it into something." I looked at my son, 36 years old. His father's face, my mother's stubborn jaw. The specific quality of a man who loves 2 women in his life and has been managing the space between them by making himself invisible in it. "It didn't get better on its own," I said. "No," he said. "Because the adjustments I made, the ones I thought were working, she was still putting them in the chat," I said. "She wasn't receiving them as improvement. She was receiving them as material." He was quiet. "I know," he said. "Marcus," I said. "I'm not going to tell you what to do about your marriage. that is yours. But I need you to understand fully, not part way, what happened here. Not the chat specifically, the pattern. The pattern, he said. She was performing our relationship to you and to me, I said. A version of it. And the real version, what she actually thought and felt, was in a group chat with 6 other people for 2 years. He looked at the floor. I know, he said very quietly. You can't manage something into health, I said. You have to name it. Whatever needs to change between her and me, between the 3 of us, it has to be named. By all of us. Clearly. He nodded. Where is she? I said. In the car, he said. She left the gathering, I said. She went out to get something, he said. She's been out there for a while. I nodded. Go get her, I said. He looked at me. Mum, this is still my gathering, I said. And she is still in my family. Go get her. He went. Courtney came inside. Not back to the gathering. Marcus brought her to the kitchen, understanding instinctively, or by some signal I hadn't consciously sent, that the kitchen was where the conversation needed to happen. The 3 of us stood in my kitchen. The coffee urn was brewing. It smells like Christmas. The coffee at these gatherings, a specific dark roast I buy from the same place every year. Courtney looked, as I would have expected her to look, the specific redness around the eyes of someone who has been crying in a cold car, the tightness in the jaw of someone who is containing something large. She was not performing now. This, I thought, was the first time in 4 years I had seen her not performing. She said, I'm so sorry. 2 words short of something real. I waited. She started. I can't, she tried again. The chat was supposed to be, I needed somewhere to vent. It started as venting, and it became something else, something I can't defend. And I'm not going to try. I looked at her. I thought about the stuffed peppers and the meat-flavored brick turkey and the blazer and the haircut and the reading glasses and the brunch mimosas and Camp Sandra and 412 mentions of my name. I thought about what I was going to say, which I had also prepared in the 12 days. Courtney, I said, I want to tell you something. She was looking at me with the specific attention of someone who is prepared to hear hard things and is not going to flinch from them. Good. That was right. I read the chat carefully, I said. All of it. Twice. And I made a list in my own mind of the things you said that I think were fair criticism of real behavior and the things you said that were unkind without being fair. She nodded barely. The first category, I said, is real. I called Marcus too often in the first year. I had opinions about your choices more frequently than was welcome. I intruded on your life as a couple in ways I didn't fully recognize at the time. Those are fair. She looked slightly surprised that I was saying this. The second category, I said, is different. The mockery of my appearance, the description of my cooking as a joke for 2 years, the characterization of time with me as something to be survived, the things I allegedly said that I don't recognize as things I said. Those are not fair, and they are not something I'm willing to absorb as legitimate feedback. She nodded more fully. I'm not going to list them for you, I said. You know what they are. You wrote them. Yes, she said. What I want, I said, is not an apology, or not only an apology. I want honesty. I want you to tell me directly to my face without the group chat what is actually difficult about our relationship, what I actually do that makes things hard for you. Not the performed version, not the venting version, the honest version. Because I cannot fix what I cannot see, and I have been trying to see it for 4 years through a window that was apparently showing me the wrong view. She was quiet for a long moment. Right now, she said. No, I said. Not right now. There are 40 people in my house and Christmas coffee brewing. But this week, you and I, wherever you're comfortable here or a neutral place, whatever you need. But this week, she looked at Marcus. He nodded. She looked back at me. Okay, she said. Good, I said. Now go wash your face. The coffee is ready. She almost smiled. It was not quite a smile, but it was the beginning of something that had not existed before, a real face, not performing. She went to wash her face. Marcus looked at me over her departing back. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "There's still work to do." I poured the coffee. The gathering continued. Not as though nothing had happened. You cannot make 42 people forget what they witnessed, and you would not want to. But with the specific resilience of families that have been gathered long enough to know how to hold difficult things and still pass the dessert. Courtney came back from washing her face and sat in her armchair and drank her coffee. She did not attempt to resume the social performance of the earlier part of the gathering. She was quieter than usual, present in a different way, subdued. Several members of the family found moments to come to me. Frank's brother, Leonard, 71, who has known me almost as long as Frank has. "Well done," he said simply and moved on. David's wife, Patricia, who pulled me aside in the hallway and said in a low voice, "I want you to know that I knew, not about the chat, but I knew there was something like it happening. I'm sorry I didn't say something." "Why didn't you?" I said. "Because I didn't think it was my place," she said. "And I think I was wrong about that." "Yes," I said. "I think you were, but I understand it." Marcus's cousin Mark, this family, has a Mark they all seem to 27 years old, who sat down beside me during the dessert hour and said nothing for several minutes, and then said, "My mum had the same thing happen with my aunt a while back. Not a group chat, but the same basic thing. The gap between the face and the actual." "What happened?" I said. "They don't really talk anymore," he said. "I'm sorry," I said. "Is that what's going to happen here?" he said. I thought about it. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "It depends on the conversation we haven't had yet." He nodded. "I hope it doesn't," he said. "So do I said. The gathering wound down at 7. Coates found children gathered the specific choreography of 42 people leaving a house in stages, each goodbye with its own weight. Some people who knew exactly what they were leaving into, and some who had pieced together the outline during the afternoon and were going home to discuss it, and some few who had managed to be mostly unaware or to protect themselves from awareness. Marcus and Courtney were among the last to leave. At the door, Courtney said not the usual parting performance, something plainer. "Wednesday, if that works for you." "Wednesday works," I said. She nodded. Marcus hugged me. A real hug, the kind he has given me since he was old enough for real. Hugs, his father's steady warmth. "I love you, Mum," he said. "I know," I said. "I love you too." They left. Frank closed the door. We stood in the hallway of our house, which had held 42 people 6 hours ago, and was now quiet with the specific quiet of a space that has been fully used and is resting. "How do you feel?" Frank said. I thought about it. "Tired," I said. "And something else." "What?" he said. "Like the window is facing the right way now," I said. He put his arm around me. "Good," he said. We went to clean up. Wednesday was at a coffee shop Courtney's choice, which I respected. A neutral territory public enough that neither of us would be performing entirely for a domestic audience private enough for a real conversation. Courtney arrived first. I arrived 3 minutes later, and she was already at a table in the back, coffee in front of her hands, wrapped around the cup, in the way of someone who needs something to hold. I sat down. I ordered tea. We looked at each other for a moment across the table, and I recognized in the silence that we were both aware that what happened next was going to set the terms for everything that followed, for years, for whatever relationship we were going to have. "I want to go first," Courtney said. "All right," I said. She talked for 23 minutes. I know it was 23 minutes because I was watching the clock, not anxiously, but with the specific attention of a teacher who has learned to track time during important conversations, so she knows when to speak and when to wait. She talked about the beginning, about the first months after she and Marcus married, when I had called him frequently and she had felt in her own home like a guest in his prior life. She talked about specific moments, not all of which I recognized, some of which landed as completely fair. She talked about the stuffed peppers, the comment that had started the chat. "I know it was one comment," she said. "I know it was meant helpfully. But I had been on high alert since we got back from the honeymoon, waiting for the thing that told me I wasn't right for your family, and the Peppers felt like that thing. I sat with this. You were waiting to be told you weren't right, I said. Yes, she said. Why? I said. She was quiet for a moment. My mother-in-law, my mother's husband's mother, the step-grandmother I grew up with, she never accepted my mum, Courtney said. Not in 20 years. And my mum, she tried for 20 years. And it never worked. And I watched that. And I think I came into this marriage ready for the same thing, preparing for the same thing. I sat with this. You came in braced for rejection, I said. Yes, she said. And when I commented on the Peppers, it confirmed what I was already waiting for, she said. I thought about this, about the specific complicated machinery of anticipation, how what we expect shapes what we experience, how the lens we bring to a thing determines what we see in it. The chat, I said. She looked at me. The chat was where you processed the confirmation, I said. Every time I did something, every comment, every call, every opinion, it went into the chat as evidence of the thing you were already expecting. Yes, she said, quietly. And the things I did that weren't evidence, I said. The times things were genuinely good. She looked at the table. Those didn't go in the chat, she said. No, I said. They wouldn't. Confirmation bias. I had taught it in 11th grade psychology units and in senior literature discussions about unreliable narrators, and in every context where the human tendency to find evidence for what you already believe creates a story that crowds out the more complicated truth. I had been an unreliable narrator's subject. Courtney, I said, I want to tell you something about the first category, the fair criticisms. She looked up. I adjusted. I said, 2 years ago, maybe 18 months in, I changed my behavior significantly. I called Marcus less. I held my opinions more. I waited to be invited rather than suggesting myself. I did this because I was paying attention, and I could see that the frequency was too much. I know, she said. Did you notice? I said. A pause. I noticed that things were different, she said. Less intense. But I didn't think about it as you making an effort. I thought it as things calming down on their own. It wasn't on its own, I said. It was a deliberate choice. She was quiet. That should have been in the chat, she said. Yes, I said. It should have. We sat with this. The second category, I said. The things that weren't fair. I need you to hear that I'm not going to absorb those as just venting. The mockery of my appearance, the turkey, the glasses. Those weren't about our relationship dynamics. Those were about me as a person. And I need you to know that I know the difference. I know, she said. I know you know. Can you tell me why? I said. Not defensively. I genuinely want to understand. Why the mockery of the things that weren't about behavior? She was quiet for a long time. I think, she said slowly, that I was performing for them, for the group. And the performance required escalation. Venting about real frustrations only goes so far before people's attention moves on. The jokes, the appearance stuff, the turkey, those kept people engaged. They were funnier. And I let the performance take over from what was real. I looked at her. You know what that sounds like? I said. She looked back at me. A character, she said. You became a character instead of a person. Yes, I said. I'm sorry, she said. And this time it was not 2 words short of something real. It was, I believed, the actual thing, not adequate, not sufficient to erase 26 months of a character named Emil Madness, but real. Thank you, I said. What happens now? She said. Now, I said, we try something different. We try talking to each other, not to a group chat, not to Marcus as an intermediary, not to our respective audiences, to each other. I don't know if I know how to do that, she said, honestly. Neither do I with you, I said. We learn. She nodded. Wednesday coffee, she said, like regularly. I looked at her. Let's start with one more Wednesday, I said. and see what it is before we schedule it. Okay, she said. Okay, I said. We finished our drinks. Outside, the December cold had the specific quality of a city in the week after Christmas. Quiet slightly spent the year running out. We said goodbye on the sidewalk. Not warmly, not the warmth that doesn't exist yet and cannot be manufactured. But with something that was, I thought, the beginning of honesty, that was enough. For Wednesday. The conversation with Marcus happened the following Saturday. He came alone. Courtney had encouraged this apparently understanding that there were things between me and my son that needed to be said without her present. He sat at my kitchen table with his coffee, and I sat across from him. And we were for a moment the mother and son. We have always been the specific version of us that exists when the rest of the world is not in the room. I need to tell you something, he said. Tell me, I said. I knew things were difficult, he said, between you and Courtney. I've known for a long time, and the way I handled it, I managed it. I told you things were fine when they weren't. I told her things were fine when they weren't. I tried to smooth everything out so nobody had to have the uncomfortable conversation. Yes, I said. And what that meant, he said, is that you were both operating on incomplete information. You didn't know what she actually felt. She didn't know what you had changed and why, and I was in the middle, making sure nobody knew the full picture. Managing, I said. Exactly what Dad said not to do, he said. Frank had apparently had a conversation with Marcus in the days between the chat discovery and the gathering that I had not known about. I made a note to ask Frank about this later. Why? I said. Why manage instead of name it? He thought about this. Because naming it meant choosing, he said. And I didn't want to choose. I didn't want to be the person who told his mother that his wife was that there was a problem. I didn't want to be the person who told his wife that she needed to change how she related to his mother. I wanted both things to be fine, so I didn't have to be in the middle of them. But you were in the middle, I said. You just weren't being honest about being in the middle. Yes, he said. Marcus, I said. The chat. The fact of it. 2 years of that being happening with your knowledge that things were difficult with Courtney's frustrations being directed somewhere rather than being directed at what was causing them. I know, he said. Did you know about the chat specifically, I said. I need to ask this directly. He met my eyes. No, he said. I didn't know about the chat. I knew she vented to her friends. I didn't know the specifics. I didn't ask because asking would have meant knowing, and knowing would have meant... He stopped. Choosing, I said. Yes, he said. I sat with this. I'm not going to tell you that's forgivable immediately, I said, because I don't know yet whether it is or what forgivable even means in this context. What I know is that it was a choice. You made the choice to not know, and that choice had consequences for me that you need to own. He nodded. I own them, he said. Good, I said. What do I do? He said. Going forward, what do you need from me? I thought about this. I need you to stop managing, I said. I need you to be honest with me when things are difficult, not when they've reached the point of a group chat. I need you to be honest with Courtney about what I actually do and what I've changed, and what the real history is, not the managed, smoothed down version, the real one. And I need you to understand that your job as a husband and as my son is not to keep everyone comfortable. It's to tell the truth. He was quiet. That's harder than managing, he said. I know, I said. It's also the only thing that works. He nodded. Mum, he said. I'm sorry. For all of it. I know, I said. I reached across the table and put my hand over his. The same hand I had held when he was small. The same shape, larger now, his father's hands. You're my son, I said. That doesn't change. He nodded. We drank our coffee. It has been 8 months. I want to tell you where things actually are, not where I wish they were or where the clean narrative would have them be. Courtney and I have had Wednesday coffee 4 times. 4 times in 8 months is not frequent, but it is 4 more times than we had in 4 years. and the quality of the 4 conversations has been different from anything we had before the chat. Not warm, not close, not the relationship either of us might have wanted in an ideal world. Honest. Specifically carefully, sometimes uncomfortably honest. She told me in the 3rd Wednesday something I had not expected to hear. I've talked to a therapist about the chat, about what it showed me about how I process things, about the gap between the person I am with my friends and the person I want to be. I received this without performing gratitude, which I think she appreciated. I'm glad, I said. It's helping, she said, I think. Good, I said. She has not gone back to an active group chat about me. I know this, because in the full openness of the first Wednesday conversation we had talked about the chat's end. She had told me she had told the group what had happened. Bree had been appalled and had apologized through Courtney for her participation. Jade had said something defensive that Courtney had not passed on in detail. The others had been various. The chat was closed. She told me this as a fact, not a promise. I received it as such. Marcus calls more than he used to. Not more than is necessary, the appropriate amount, the amount of a man who has had a reckoning with what appropriate amount actually means, and is applying the new understanding with some care. He told me in the Saturday conversation that he and Courtney had started couples counselling, not because of the chat specifically, or not only, because the chat had made visible something in their marriage that had been invisible the way they had been managing around me, rather than being honest with each other about what they each needed. This was not my business, and he did not need to tell me. He told me because he is now, with more consistency, choosing honesty over management. I told him I was proud of him. He looked slightly surprised. For what? He said. For choosing the harder thing, I said. The Christmas gathering, the next one, the one I'm now planning for this December, will happen. 42 people, same house, same coffee urn, same dark roast. Marcus and Courtney will come. The family will come. It will be a different gathering from the last one. Not dramatically, families carry things without announcing them, and the people who were there for last year's question will hold it in some form, while the people who weren't will simply be at Christmas. But it will be different, because the window is facing the right way now, and because honest is harder and smaller and more real than performed, and real is what I want. Let me tell you the things I learned that I did not expect to learn. The first thing, I had a role in this. I want to say this clearly, because this story could be told as a story of pure wrongdoing, cruel daughter-in-law, long-suffering mother-in-law, secret chat exposure justice. And there are elements of that story that are true. But the fuller story includes my own role in the conditions that produced the chat. I called Marcus too often. I had opinions about their life more frequently than was useful. I did not ask early enough whether I was getting it right. I assumed my intentions were readable as good intentions, and they were not always. None of this excuses 2 years of mockery. But it is true, and if I tell this story only as the wrongdoing version, I am doing the same thing Courtney did in the chat, telling a partial story to an audience that agrees with me. I don't want to do that. The second thing, group chats are not safe spaces. Not because privacy doesn't exist, it does, but because what we say in private spaces is not separate from who we are. The character you perform in the group chat is a version of you. The unkindness that feels justified in a venting session with 7 friends is still unkindness. The mockery that gets rewarded with laughing emojis is still mockery. The chat was not a therapeutic outlet that prevented worse behavior in person. The chat was behavior. And it shaped Courtney's experience of me as much as my actual behavior did, because she was rehearsing a story about me in that chat, rehearsing it, reinforcing it, getting it confirmed by 6 people who were agreeing with her. And that rehearsed story was what she brought to every Sunday dinner and every family gathering. If you have a group chat that is unkind to someone, you are in relationship with a family member, a colleague, a friend. I want to offer you this. That chat is not neutral. It is shaping how you'd see that person. And it is not private in any sense that matters, because you are carrying it with you. The third thing, the accidental addition, was not entirely accidental. I want to be careful about this because I do not know this for certain, and I want to be clear that I don't know it for certain. But I have thought about it many times, and what I know is that Courtney is a careful, organized person who manages events for a living and who very rarely does things carelessly. And I know that in the week before the accidental addition, she and I had a slightly awkward interaction at Marcus's office holiday party. Nothing significant, nothing dramatic, but the kind of interaction that produces a specific uneasy feeling. And I know that the addition happened at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, which is not a time when most people are rushing. I do not know if she added me on purpose in some semi-conscious desire for the thing to end, for the truth to land. I have not asked her, and I do not intend to ask her. But I hold the question, because sometimes the things we call accidents are the things we couldn't bring ourselves to do on purpose, finding a way to happen anyway. The fourth thing, the question was right. I have thought a great deal about whether standing in front of 42 people at Christmas and announcing that I had read the chat was the correct choice. It was not a small act. It was not a quiet correction. It was a public naming of a private wrong in the most public family context available to me. Some people, when I have described this to them, have said too much. You could have spoken to her privately. You could have handled it without the audience. I considered a private conversation. And what I understood when I considered it was that a private conversation would have produced a private correction. An apology from Courtney, managed and contained, that I could not verify, had reached the people who had participated in it. A situation that could be privately denied, minimized, explained away in the way of private things. The chat was not private in any meaningful sense. 7 people knew about it. Those 7 people had participated in it. The family members who were discussed in it had been discussed in it without their knowledge or consent. Making it visible to the family in the context of the family gathering was the response appropriate to its scale. Was it comfortable for Courtney? No. Was it fair? I believe, yes. Would I do it again? Yes. The fifth thing is the most important. In 31 years of teaching literature, I gave my students one question that I return to every year in every class, at every level: what do you do with what you know? Not how do you feel about it, not who was right and who was wrong. What do you do? Knowledge creates obligation. When you know something, you can no longer pretend not to know it. You have to act, and inaction is itself an action, a choice to let things remain as they are. The chat gave me knowledge. I could have done nothing with it. I could have left the group silently taken. My screenshots said nothing continued attending Sunday dinners and Beaumont Christmases with the specific practiced competence of a woman who manages what she knows rather than acts on it. I had been doing that for years in a different form, managing what I sensed rather than naming it. The knowledge was too specific for management. I did something with it. Not the most dramatic thing available, not the least. The thing that felt true. And truth once said, cannot be unsaid. That is not always comfortable. It is always real. I would rather real than comfortable at 63. I suspect I would rather real at any age if I am being honest with myself. And now I want to ask you something, because this story is universal in a way that most stories about mother-in-law conflicts are not. And I want to name the universality before I ask the question. We all have group chats, not necessarily named male madness, not necessarily about a mother-in-law, but we all have the conversations we have about people we are in relationship with, the conversations with friends, with siblings, with colleagues, where we say the things we do not say to the person's face. Some of those conversations are necessary. Venting is real. Processing frustrations with trusted people is healthy. The private space where you can say, that was hard today, or she did something that hurt me, is a legitimate human need. The question is not whether those spaces should exist. The question is, what version of the person are you building in those conversations? Because if what you are building, conversation by conversation, message by message, laughing emoji by laughing emoji, if what you are building is a character rather than a person, a story rather than a relationship, a case file rather than a human being who is trying, that character will eventually be all you can see, And the person, the actual complicated, trying imperfect, occasionally overstepping person, will disappear behind it. That is what happened to me in MIL Madness. Not because I was perfect, I wasn't, but because the chat needed a character and I became one. The first question I want to ask you, are you in a group chat right now that is doing this to someone not venting, not processing genuine hurt, performing a character for an audience of friends who validate the performance? If you are, what would it cost you to close it? Not to be silent about your frustrations, to say them to the person they're about, or to a therapist, or to one trusted friend who is honest with you, rather than just agreeing with you. To stop rehearsing a story about someone that prevents you from actually seeing them. The second question, have you been in my position? Have you discovered, through an accidental addition, through a screenshot forwarded by the wrong person, through an overheard conversation, through any of the 1,000 ways private things become unprivate? Have you discovered that you were a character in someone else's story without knowing it? If you have, what did you do with what you knew? And if you haven't, if you are sitting with the fear that this could happen to you? Because everyone who has a group chat about someone should carry that fear. What would you want to do with what you knew? If you knew. The third question is for the Courtneys. I say this without contempt, because I sat across from Courtney on a Wednesday in December and heard something real come out of her, and I believe people are capable of more than their worst behavior. If you are someone who has built a character out of a real person, a mother-in-law, a colleague, a friend, you have outgrown anyone. I want to offer you the question you cannot answer in the group chat, because the group chat only answers it one way. What is the cost? Not to them, to you. Because maintaining a character requires energy, requires performing the story fresh for every new member of the audience, requires finding new evidence for the narrative, requires being the person who keeps the group engaged and validated. It is in its way exhausting. And the relationship, the real one, the possible one, the one that might have existed if the character hadn't taken over that relationship, was the cost. For Courtney, the cost was 4 years of a relationship with her mother-in-law that was not real. 4 years. Was the performance worth it? I don't think so. I don't think she does either now. Leave me a comment. Tell me about your group chats, the ones you've been in and the ones that have been about you. Tell me if you've been accidentally added somewhere, or if you've accidentally added someone. Tell me what you would have done with the screenshots. Tell me if you have a Courtney, or if you are one. I read every comment. I'm Sandra. I am 63 years old. I taught English literature for 31 years. I know what unreliable narrators do to the people they are narrating. I know because I was one of those people. I also know that stories can be retold. Courtney is relearning how to tell ours. So am I. That is the work. That is where we are. That is, I think, enough.